get started, and then at least some people may need to leave it.
Yes, 2 people are coming down, but
Okay.
I think we should start in any case, and whoever scrabbles in can just pick up. So thank you so much all for joining us tonight. It's lovely to see new and old faces. I'm really excited to host Evan tonight because I think for the last 2 or 3 years, everything that we've done with Evan has completely been online. But as you know, you're here for Evan, not for me, and we really look forward to this new chapter of what Evan is going to teach us today. So what we will be doing is we will be sending you an SMS at the end before we end this evening. Please give us your feedback because obviously from a training perspective we like to incorporate in our planner, which you see on the tables, things that are relevant to you and your business. So thank you so much, and Evan, thank you for your time this evening.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Tracy. I'm sure many of you already signed up for mentors at Orts. If you're starting your own businesses, it's an amazing place to be involved with. And as a mentor myself, and also having a mentor for my own businesses, it's been a lifesaver in many situations. So just before I start, a little about myself. I'm Evan Kagan and have been involved in the Big Four. On my LinkedIn profiles, they call me a Big Four veteran. That's what I've kind of turned myself to some extent at the very end of it. I worked at Deloitte. I used to run the org design practice for Africa and human capital and strategy practice, and subsequent to that, I've started some of my own businesses. And really, my core purpose is to really help organizations to find clarity in the rough situation, the economy, all the different things that are going on out there. So how do we thrive in difficult situations in what the economy is giving us? I'm gonna have to. I didn't bring a clicker, so. All right. So what we're going to be running through very briefly, for the whole hour, we'll take a full hour. So indulge. You're welcome to ask questions as I'm going. We're going to go into the current state of work. Let's get a bit dramatic. I'm going to go there. The world has changed since COVID. How adaptive are we in 2024? How are we running organizations? I'm seeing as a consultant to large-scale organizations and scaling organizations. A lot of the organizations that I'm working with are struggling to scale effectively, and those that are large and have got thousands of employees are struggling in terms of they're very traditional in their approach. So how do we strike that balance? And we'll go through a bit of that. I'm going to bring a case study from F1. I've become quite a fan of it. And then first steps for businesses. So just indulge me until we get to ready with, you'll be picking up anecdotes and concepts that you can apply in your own businesses throughout the presentation, but I'll really get practical in terms of what are the steps that you would have to take in your own organizations. All right, so the current stark reality of work. So I've said, let's get a little bit dramatic. I'm going to stand over here. Just tell me if you can't see. You can direct me as you would need to go. So here's something, we all know, the great reshuffle, the great resignation that happened just during COVID, right? The point is that people became a lot bolder. So if you take a look, this is from The Economist, number of people quitting their jobs in the United States. This is when COVID hit. We can see that 4.53 million people had resigned. And the assumption at that point in time was because people were just couldn't come to work, or there was just mass unemployment or retrenchments happening. But actually there was a choice that was happening. If you take a look at the other one, there were record numbers of vacancies and staff shortages in some industries by choice. So what COVID gave the critical mass was a choice as to how to lead their lives. And that was quite an interesting thing to observe. We see now with the ANC manifesto that 2.5 million job opportunities in the next 5 years, but it's a very nice statement, right? So just as a caveat, my stepfather is very involved, and I had a couple of conversations about this particular site. There's a lot of depth behind it, but essentially the government is trying to propose all these jobs that will be created, but how are they going to do it? How do they deal with chaos? How do they deal with complexity? You can't just start to say we're going to hand out jobs and increase the civil services, and there's lots of quotas and policies and procedures, and I'll go into a couple of slides time about how my own organization, Smart City Solutions, which I got an investor from outside, and we went into municipalities, how unfortunately that was crippled because of the way that the state is run. So the way that we deal with complexity, applying a social system on that just won't work. So it's a very nice statement, but the plans never come through, as we know. And unemployment rates rise in South Africa. We all know the story, right? It's all over us. We don't have to go into too much about that. But it just goes to show that the plans and the processes just don't suit an environment to go and create that stimulus. And here's something we all know as well, I'm sure, maybe this is from last week, in fact, that we've got currently 32.1% of people unemployed in our country, but there's also, there are 3 million discouraged work seekers and have other reasons for not searching for work. And so the official unemployment rate is currently 41%, around there. So how can a state really go and do anything other than relying on small businesses to go and stimulate the economy? And that's why we need, as organizations, as startups, or maybe scaling organizations, we need to do something very different. And it's not going to happen just by applying traditional approaches. We have to do something very, very different, apply complexity thinking, systems thinking, and that's what we're going to be talking about today and how we do it. So here's where I maybe start crying a little bit. So the sad story of Smart City Solutions, that was in 2017, or 2018 officially. End of 2017, I left a beautiful career in Deloitte, in consulting. And what happened was, I was very gung-ho about being an entrepreneur. I found that in the corporate environment, there were lots of opportunities, but again, they were traditionally run. And so the ability to bring out the best of Evan Kagan was just, they weren't able to go and tap into that, the way that they were running the business. And I'm very free-spirited as a human being. It's like I've got a long history behind that, but I started Smart City Solutions, which was all about finding a way for municipalities to build themselves, to go and reach their development plans, all their economic plans, etc., the IDPs. And how I did was to go and I found an investor from New York. He invested a few million rand into it, and we started to put up traffic fine systems and also parking innovations in these municipalities. And within a very short span of time, I had 5 contracts that we had won within 1 year. And things were looking really good. We started with 3 of them in the year 1 in 2018. And I was driving literally to Pongola, and then to Tembisili, Hani, and then to Bizana, like all these places. It was an interesting experience to see what real South Africa is about. I really loved that component of it. But the processes and the red tape and the governance of how these municipalities are run just didn't allow for me to really thrive. And we landed up, unfortunately, losing a bit of money in the process. It never got done. In fact, there's a law case or a lawsuit that's happening right now with one of the municipalities from my investor. And simple things, the officers were meant to go out at a certain time every day. No, you're not our boss. We can't listen to you. So where's the sponsorship? And I'm, as a management consultant, kind of set things up front. We put all the traditional things that you have to put in the business plan and the sponsorship and the stakeholder management and all these things. But for whatever reason it was, they didn't, although they're kind of encouraging PPPs, private-public participation, it didn't ever help anything because they didn't appreciate, they didn't feel that the private sector had anything to do and to contribute to what they were doing in the municipalities. And literally the aim and the whole mission and philosophy behind Smart City Solutions was to create a low-hanging fruit revenues, traffic fines. We would get them from 0.5% collections of their fines through putting in a simple call center and a dunning process to even 5%. And that would, in each municipality, offer them in excess of 2 million rand per month. Right? And we would take a small chunk in administrative fee for that. Then the parking, to rent out the space, obviously we'd charge a minimal amount in the rural areas, but it was something to go and get them going and to create the transparency and to create proper urbanization and planning around those cities. And yet what happened? They wouldn't listen to us. So, and if not, then you can't, I can give you a last example about this is where I get emotional about it, is that I would drive like 4.5 hours to Pongola, for example, and get there for a 9 o'clock in the morning meeting, and the guy would only arrive at 6 in the evening and saying, sorry Evan, actually we can't meet today, can you come back next week? So it's like that type of mentality that needs to change in order to get things right. And now we stand, this is obviously very emotive, and these are the choices, and obviously there's more, but coalition governments, what does that mean? 29th of May, big stuff. Lots of interesting places that we're going to be going in this. But this is what I'm saying. So how do we react as South African entrepreneurs? So this is Stephen Covey, he's I'm a big fan of all his books. Highly proactive people don't blame circumstances, conditions, or conditioning for their behavior. The behavior is a product of their own conscious choices. So we have this complex situation. So how do we deal with this? Do we fight or flight? How do we leave the country? Like many people, there's always the question I'm getting, do I leave? That's not an option for me, because I believe that we have, we'll go into, there's lots of opportunities. But let's go into a little bit to build more of the complexity that we have right now and what we need to be in touch with. So business challenges are unprecedented. So, we have specific cultures in organizations, right? There's different generations that are now enmeshed in our organizations. How do we kind of navigate through Generation Z, Alpha generation, which is many of our children coming up the ranks now? We're going to be matriculating and coming into the service. How do we manage that with your baby boomers who are in their 50s and 60s, etc.? How do you mesh that type of culture? And even when you're starting up, we'll go into it a little bit later, in your own organizations, when you're choosing your people, how do you mesh that culture with who you are and what your vision and purpose of your organization is? That's a very, very important area that you need to delve into. Meetings. How many meetings? I mean, with teams, and we'll see a slide later on it. One of my big clients, last year I worked on a project with them for 7 months to redesign their whole operating model and all their structures and the capacity, how many people they should have. One of the largest schemes in our country, medical schemes specifically, they're spending about 9 hours a day in meetings, and therefore they're working in the night until 2 in the morning as an average. And that's, Nicole over there is laughing because I know she does that as well, not because of Jaco, but used to, I know that. But the point is, how do we balance and how do we streamline and become effective in the way that we run our meetings? Bureaucracy, red tape, the examples of the municipalities that we had, that I gave you now. How do you get through having fluid systems, being agile in the way that you're running your organizations so that you don't take long to make a decision? This day and age, in the world of complexity, you need to be able to make decisions like that, and there's systems and ways that you do that. That's part of what I've built in the blueprint that I'll show you later. Then innovation, there's disruption and there's innovation. Disruption is typically, when I structure organizations, do organizational design, disruptors are those, I put them at a different campus altogether. They sit and they're forward thinking and that's it. Your innovators are those who are looking at your current processes and they're saying, how do we become more effective in the way that we do that? Now, for a startup and a scaling organization, your juniors, your most new individuals, you've got to create a culture where everybody is really innovating and creating greater efficiencies. And that means you've got to distribute the authority to them. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. That they can make decisions and actually propose better ways of doing things. Don't think that you own everything as a leader. It's all about creating almost like I wouldn't say democracy, but getting them to be able to create new systems and efficiencies. Very, very critical. Competition, we know this. At any point in time, you can have a disruptor that's coming, and so you need to be able to be forward-thinking the whole time so that you are able to be ahead of the game. And obviously the economy and government and pandemics, etc. This is the complex environment that we're dealing with. And then not only that, what are our latest generations who have the audacity and the chutzpah, as we say, To be able to say, as I said in the Great Resignation slide, they are able to choose their lives, and they're choosing a lot more. Take a look. They want a positive culture. They want mental health and well-being. It's critical. I've got a whole. I brought in a product from Israel called Uvital, which we're running with quite a few organizations now, and it's critical to any organization. That is a game changer in terms of maintaining your staff or not. Sense of purpose. People are looking to build or form part of an organization that is looking for purpose and has a vision that's going to be sustainable, not just money. Let's go appease or please our shareholders. Money is the air that we breathe, but how do you kind of create life behind that organization is what purpose does. And what I'll go into a little bit later through one or two anecdotes is that every single decision itself needs to be based on that sense of purpose. We'll talk about that. Flexible work hours. Who needs to work 9 to 5 anymore? We know that most of us are going beyond it anyways, but let it be a way that I can work when I feel, let me study, let me go maybe even moonlight and do other work roles. Nothing, as long as I'm going to be the best I can and actually build the business that you're satisfied and I'm going beyond through my whole ecosystem that I'm working with. Let me go and choose my hours, etc. Obviously, there's got to be frameworks and there's got to be a science behind that. I've run quite a few projects in the last year and a half on hybrid workforces. How do you kind of design those things? There's a deep science behind that. But people will actually leave an organization if they don't have that flexibility. So how do you maintain your staff? That's another way. And then positive feedback and recognition. Performance management is no longer just as every 6 months or every annual or every year to go and give feedback. It's actually in the flow of work. How do we kind of maintain that open environment where people are communicating and providing feedback in the flow? Yes, there's a formal process behind that, but it needs to be literally at least every month is what I'm recommending to clients. So then we know, this is a presentation I actually I ran about 2 years ago at Aut and other clients. I gave a whole thing on AI and robots and RPAs, etc. But essentially, a couple of years back when I gave this talk, it was very in and hip. But does this still apply? Fast forward 20 to 30 years from now, 2050, let's say. Based on current estimates research, there are those who believe that robotic labor will have started to substitute human labor en masse across most sectors of the economy. Now, is this fact or fiction? So we're seeing in our own world that there's a lot of, I'm actually designing right now with in a particular large organization. We're analyzing the processes and the way the RPAs, all the robots and the bots can come in and kind of take over certain parts of their process. Where do you put AI into it? So yes, it may not be physical robots, and yes, there are. In Israel, I've got my brother and sister-in-law, and many of us have got families in Israel who have got the domestic workers' jobs are, because they don't have them there, they literally got a robot to go and do cleaning up the house. I've seen it. It's quite amazing. Is that a fact or fiction? And then past automation versus AI. This is a framework that I put forward on the day. How do we kind of see which roles are going to become obsolete the quickest? So like if you look at degree of repetition versus degree of cognition, you take a look at non-routine and manual versus routine manual. These are pretty much already gone, And then you see that the cognitive, which is using our minds, AI is already, I use ChatGPT and others all the time when I'm putting together whatever I'm doing. I always get it to check me and to give me some different insights. And the way they say that the next greatest job is going to be, what do they call it? What was it? AI engineers. Basically those who can actually go and, AI coders. Not that you're building the AI, but I think there's maybe a different term for it, but it doesn't matter for now. But how you go and get the best out of AI, how do you kind of code it so that you can feed it the right information so it can pump out what you're expecting and beyond. So AI is already with us. And there was a lot of anxiety, which we'll see now, but robots are becoming much more affordable, so it's going to take over much sooner, which it already is. I pay 450 Rand for ChatGPT, the paid version, every month. And as I said, I rely on it very much for a lot of things. Well, to speed things up, not because I rely on it because I can't think, but you know what I'm saying. their businesses are increasingly replacing humans. In 2018 already, there was an organization in China that replaced 60,000 employees through robotics and artificial intelligence. And then 47% of our workforce, and there's probably more in South Africa, there was a US study that they're saying that those are the employees that fall under the high risk category to be replaced. So 47% of the workforce is quite a lot. I'm just trying to continue to paint the complexity that we're dealing with and how we as organizations need to be looking at these things as well. There's a great book by Yuval Harari, I'm sure many of you heard of him. He's written Homo sapien and 21st Century, how to deal with it. And there's some of he kind of puts good solutions, how it's not as grim as what has been painted over here. So one of the impacts on careers is the need for new skills. We can't forget that. So when you're employing people, you need to be making sure that the right skill sets are coming in to your organization. And providing the opportunities for upskilling and reskilling are on the decline, which at this point in time, it was in 2021, from Degree, which is a great L&D Learning and Development Institute that I subscribe to. So at the same time that we're looking that you need to be upskilling, the opportunities for upskilling are actually on the decline. The workforce has become more stressed and vulnerable, right? So this next slide over here is quite interesting. It's creating a lot of anxiety, and for those psychologists in the room, there are a couple. The impact on, look on the right-hand side, impact on stress and mental health. Nearly 55% of workers, managers, and business leaders said that lack of confidence in their skills makes their job more stressful. If we don't know how things are adapting, we feel a lot more stressed and anxious about our role. And what does that lead to? Declining productivity. So it kind of has a ripple effect there. The impact on confidence and performance. 41%, more than 4 in 10 people say that a lack of confidence in their skills means tasks take longer to complete. Right? So this is all from 2021. And this is the sectors in terms of financial technology, etc. When do you believe that your skills will become obsolete? And so, you know, if you take a look at some of them are saying that the blues within 12 months. So quite a few, 30%, you can see that. But on the majority, it's within 5 years, which is, we're already in that 5 years now. However, there's a strong swing in favor of AI. Everybody that I work, so those are the 2021 stats. Now in 2024, we see that actually people are embracing and they are adopting AI in every part of their daily lives. We can't get away with it. It actually is helping us. So according to the study here, this is a study by Microsoft, where they analyzed all their Teams meetings, because but between Slack and Teams and a couple of others, most people use Microsoft or Slack. And what they've done out of, I think it was like a few 100 million people that they actually surveyed, or they got the data because it's all live for them. But they can see that there's mainly emails, 15% of email increase, Teams meetings are increasing, Teams chats, and less creativity, because people are so indulged in the kind of administrative things of what we do. And so we need to change. We need to make that change, and people are changing. So 60% of the survey respondents say that they struggle with too much time spent searching information. Since February 2020, people are 3 times more meetings and calls per week. So therefore, what's happening from the same report is that AI is being embraced, and they're actually increasing employee productivity exponentially. It's a big shift. Everybody that as I said earlier, everybody that I'm working with is embracing AI. It's saving me probably about 2 to 3 hours a day by me using ChatGPT, because everything that, if I want to build out a presentation, it takes me 15 to 20 minutes as opposed to 1 hour. So if you accumulate all of those things, especially now I'm literally going to be going on to 4 clients at once, and so these accelerators are like critical. So we need to be embracing in our small and scaling businesses as part of what we do. If you're getting out advertising, there's specific apps and plugins that are essential to what we do. Even psychologists, they're just using AI. My uncle's over here. I'm not just joking. A lot of people are you can't obviously, substitute a psychologist or, but I had an app last year in teenage wellness called Vive Teens, which we got into quite a few schools in South Africa, which had a chatbot on it. And teenagers were able to go and ask it pretty much any question around their wellness, but the answer, but then obviously it always pushed towards seeing somebody in person. You cannot replace that, obviously. All right, and then the last thing around the complexity element is that we've got a lot of, as I said earlier, a lot of different generations within our organizations right now. You take a look at the baby boomers, the baby boomers are this one. So it's on steep decline from 1994, pretty much, when they came into the workforce. What's really increasing is your Generation X and Generation Z, which is now those coming in from those born or coming in, I don't remember exactly, but coming from 2012. So there's a lot of interplays in how you kind of balance that complexity. All right, any questions so far? I know I'm speaking quite fast. You can slow me down if you want to. All right. Okay, so how adaptive are we in 2024? So we've got all this complexity that's happening. Can you all see this in the back? I want you guys to take a look. If any of you have worked in larger corporates or in your own organizations, you've got a few people. I mean, you need to have a couple of people really to have this relevant to you. But picture yourself if you aren't there yet, scaled. You're scaling now, you've got 51 people, or you've got 20 people in your business. It could even be 2, doesn't matter. But what of these relate to you? Any of them ring a bell? Tracy's laughing over here. Want to volunteer anything? We're not there.
Can't see them.
Oh, you can't? You want to come
We
closer?
can't see it.
Oh, you can't see? Okay, fine. But I'll give you a couple of anecdotes. So I've run this session with quite a few organizations, specifically large organizations. So like making speeches, talk as frequently as possible, number 2, and a great length. Illustrate your points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. So speaking, and having a meeting with like 15 to 20 people in it, and then you've got to speak as much as you can. Insist on doing everything through channels. We can't make a decision. You have to go through this process, that process, that process. That's another example that everybody laughs at the same time, right? When possible, refer all matters to committees for further study and consideration. Let's not make a decision here and now. Let's send it off to a committee. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. And the list goes on. So this is how most organizations are run. And I know we've got some PwC guys here and larger corporates. It's still going on, this. Now, there is a slide behind this which I've hidden for time purposes, but essentially, this in 1944, J.W. Donovan, he was the head to the precursor of the CIA. He formed a book called The Simple Sabotage, and he got all the allies who were against Germany to get together. Those who were actually living in Germany, they were allies to the Brits and the US, etc. And the Simple Sabotage book was made up of, obviously, military-style things, which is the 90% of the book, but 10% was a manual to how to kind of disrupt the way the economy is in Germany. And he said, all you guys who are strong business people in large corporates in the German economy, implement this. And this was the way to go, and it literally uncoupled or decoupled the economy of Germany at the time. Through simple things like this, speak as much as you can, have as many meetings as you can. And what happens? I presented this to a government organization last year, and they couldn't believe it. This was meant to go and destabilize the German economy, yet this is how we run our businesses today. It's slowly changing. But this is the antithesis of how you deal with complexity. Put more processes in, put more governance, take slower decisions, make sure everybody's on board before you, okay, that's a good thing. But you can't make a decision until the leaders are in favor of this. You're never going to get anywhere. That's not how you deal with complexity. And that was how we destabilized the German economy. And it's stuck. Tell me which year was this organogram. Anybody know? Anyone that look familiar? Does it look like any of yours? Okay, well, you've seen. So I know I'm maybe talking quite high in terms of larger corporates here, but I'm trying to prove a point, and we'll narrow it down to how we run our businesses. So this actually is from 1910, an organogram, and I'm an org design specialist, so I do organograms, right? So I could go to any large-scale bank, and this looks, oh, it could be ours. I can always get the answers, it could be ours, but actually it's 1910, the operating organization of the Union Pacific and Southern Pacific systems. It's like basically like a Transnet, essentially, right? So, and I actually did the HR shared services. I designed their whole organization in HR for Transnet. And it did look a bit like this, to be honest, and I wasn't very proud. We did well, but it's typical, right? So with all the new innovations that are happening, it's maybe a bit small, but we're having relentless innovation. My kids or any of us could go and tell us the new Tesla version or the new iPhone that's come out, etc., etc. Yet when it comes to the way we structure and run our businesses, we are living in antiquity. We're back in the 1910s through the previous slide and this slide. So we have to change, because that's not going to get us through complexity. And thank God, I'm getting a lot of kind of referrals and requests to going to help organizations how to run things differently in a complex environment. So how do we succeed is the question. This is where it comes a little bit more relevant to you, is how you can structure. So the way that I believe that we should be, and this should be at the culture and the foundation of any organization, is you have, as an example, you've got a traffic light system and you've got a roundabout. There was a study done about 10 years ago in the US as to which would be more effective in terms of creating more free flow of traffic, which is more, it's economically valuable, it's going to have the best ROI, return on investment, it's going to be safer, of course. And which one would you think is, you obviously know where I'm going with this, but what would you think is more effective?
The circle.
The circle, right? That's right, it was. Obviously you need the space for it. In the US there's a lot of places that are doing that, and in Cape Town, for example, look at that roundabout by the Cape Town City Stadium. It's really effective. I don't know how many accidents there's ever been over there, but you go to robots. I know I live in Ben Hazel Sandringham area. The closest robot to me, there's an accident pretty much every 3 weeks. Yeah, so it's crazy. But the point, the greater point is this: is when a municipality, we are governed mainly by the red, orange, and green light system. And what does it say? A municipality is telling the citizens that we don't trust you. We don't trust you. You've got to do as we say. There's no free choice. There's no autonomy as there is in that system over there. That system, the roundabout system, the assumption behind it is that we can make a choice cleverly. I don't need an officer to be guiding me over here. It speaks worlds about how we can be governing our organizations. Give people the freedom of choice, aligned to a certain vision. Otherwise, you're going to be disengaging them. And that's come through and through in all the organizations I'm speaking to all the time, is that they've been operating traditionally, and I'm using that word a lot, traditionally, or legacy, because it's the only way it's what we have to change fundamentally. We have to move to that system over there, which is within obviously a frame of reference, or a framework, to go and give them the autonomy to go and make decisions. We have to trust our people. And that's essentially, in a nutshell, what my business, PeopleCore Consulting, is about complexity consciousness and people positivity. If you have those two, you will be able to go and deal with the complexity in a very beautiful and amazing way, and you'll really thrive. It's all about those assumptions. So this is my vision for PeopleCore and for all of you. So what if your organization could run itself, which is the future of work? What if a leader or your managers, we work so damn hard, how would it be if we could actually be sitting and leaving it, okay, I'm not saying we'll be lazy and sitting on the beach, but actually take, so many of us as leaders struggle to take a break and have work-life balance because we're so in control of everything. We can't trust the people on the ground who actually know more about the business than I do as a leader. We can't trust them. And therefore we can never actually have, and also for them to be able to go and move, around and do their own thing. But essentially, what if we were able to get better every day without having to move mountains to make it so? What if we could stop giving orders, stop checking in to see how things are going? Stop obsessing over your budget, your plan, your next quarter. How relevant is it from last year? The world has fundamentally and exponentially changed. Why do we even have a budget anymore that's based on last year's budget? Why do we have a strategy that's based on last year's strategy? It's not fractal. It means nothing. And so organizations are still taking those old budgets and they're going on these, and I see it all the time. I was just involved in one about 3 weeks ago with one of the consulting houses that I work with. We went on a breakaway for 2 days and we had a wonderful time in building strategies, and I can guarantee you next January we'll revise it. We'll look at it again. It's not fractal, it's not part of who we are. And so having those type of things where we're obsessed about the past, you learn from it, but don't base everything off it. It means nothing. The world is changing daily, and we need to be putting our ear to the ground and learning from it the whole time. To do this, one needs to seek purpose, transparency, and reputation to create cultures of freedom and responsibility, be intentional but full of serendipity, and to be decentralized but coherent. So within a world of, there's a system around decentralization. Everything okay so far? Are you with it? All right. So one of the things that traditional organizations build as a result of not working and aligned to the new complexity way of working and future of work is that we build up something called organizational debt. Now, obviously we know typical debt, financial debt, and all those types of things. Organizational debt are ways of working which are irrelevant today. There could be meetings which are, the way that we're running our meetings, it's organizational debt, the number of meetings, the systems that we have, the way that we're communicating with each other, the way that we interact with it, why does everybody have to come into the office, etc. Those could or could not, depending on your organization, it could be relevant to each of you in your own organization spaces. That could be organizational debt. As I said here, like the ever-growing invite list for monthly meetings that nobody likes, nobody wants to be part of. Using last year's budget, as I said, as a baseline for this year's budget. A policy prohibiting employees from writing or speaking about their work on social media. That happened to me. I was running a big project a year and a bit ago with one of the large corporates consulting houses, and I posted a picture with the client, with them, and they said, no, you can't put our company in it. You can still post the thing, but take our name off it, because we can't publicize this, even though it was like their client and they signed their contract, NDAs, etc. I don't know, it made no sense to me. But like that is a policy which prohibits certain things, which is that really necessary? Is that our game? And how does it happen? The important point over here, relevant to you, is that it starts off because startup decisions, in a startup organization, everybody's doing everything. That's the entrepreneurial spirit, that's beautiful. But then as you start to scale, you start to take on habits which don't apply to a scaling organization. So, knee-jerk, where decisions made out of knee-jerk reaction. We have to get this done now, we're going to suit the client, the client, satisfy the client tomorrow, so we make a quick decision, and that's that. And now that sticks. Or we want to be risk averse, we learned our lesson badly from a bad decision we made, and now we put a policy there that prohibits something which is actually irrelevant today. So those are organizational debt concepts which are typically spawned from startups, and they don't change it. Or I'm not going to go into all that, but you're getting the point. So the foundations to building. As I said to you, people positivity. So we come into the world naturally, and I really, really deep inside my essence believes in this, that we come into the world naturally curious and ready to explore. We don't lack motivation to learn and grow. We all want to be. Every single person is here today, and you guys are literally the future of our economy, or maybe the US economy, because there's a boundary in this world, hopefully, right? We don't lack motivation to learn and grow. It's built in. It's what we do. Look at our children some of us have got young kids still. And this innate sense of autonomy can be enhanced or undermined, and I've spoken about it earlier. But then complexity. Is this engine complex or is it complicated? What do you guys say? Complex, right? Is that what you think? Huh? So there's a definition, we need to get that right, is that this is actually complicated because you can predict what's going to happen. An engine breaks down, you take it to the mechanic, and they're able to start to diagnose and say, okay, this happens and this typically happens. That's not how businesses run. Traditionally, that's how it used to run in an uncomplex environment. Complexity, however, is like a traffic jam, right? So you're on your route, Waze or Google Maps is telling you that you're going to be there in 25 minutes. You're on your way to the meeting. Suddenly, there's an accident, or there's a hailstorm and the roads become flooded, or whatever it is, right? So you cannot predict what's going to happen. So that's complexity, and I've gone into a lot of depth around how it shows up. And here's a nice little cartoon, if you can read it. Every employee will wear a button that says, I'm empowered. From now on, you have to all say you're empowered. We believe in autonomy. But I don't want to, the one guy says. That's not my style. No, you have to, says the leader. That was everything you need to know about life in one package, right? So there's a fine line between how we deal with complexity and kind of work with our employees and teams around how we're dealing with this. So it's very nice to speak it, but actually enacting it and enabling others to work in a way of complexity is a different story. So let's get practical. This is where F1 comes in. Before I go into F1, this is, I don't know if this is complicated or complex. This is the model that I've just built with my partner, which is the foundation of PeopleCore Consulting. Essentially, I know it's maybe not so sexy yet, but it's getting there. It's a first draft, right? I just added it today. It's fresh from yesterday. But essentially, you'd have to have obviously your customer, stakeholder, community purpose, right, lies in the center. Your strategy is how you kind of move and navigate to your purpose, and it's constantly changing. Your strategy, yes, we'll go into it a bit, maybe in another session, I don't know about today, but your strategy will be typically, most companies have, depending on your size, but I would say for small organizations, a 1 to 2 year size, that's your strategy. For those that are probably up to 20 employees, and then it goes a bit longer. But your strategy now must be aligning to purpose all the time. But around that is how you design your organization, the information flow, your resources from monetary and physical humans, I'm saying. Workflow, how you pass on your workflows, where have you got robotics, where have you got, looking at all of these, but this is the model from your complexity consciousness. If you build these, you become more complexity conscious. If you build those, innovation, personal mastery, reward and recognition, autonomy, belonging. So that's your people positive segment on that. So complexity consciousness, people positivity, and really what I'm doing in my consulting business is to take organizations. We do a whole fractal purpose session, and then we start to identify where are the bottlenecks, the areas that you can work on. And then I've got we do launch mission teams around getting those much better. I'm not going to go into all of that detail now, but that's what we do. And then another thing is, how do you go from stability, and is it a hybrid of this, stability to autonomy to agility? How do we structure as organizations? This is quite a technical slide, I'm not going to go into it, but it's essentially your traditional, is your marketing, HR, etc. I'm going to go to the far right, which is how you become agile. If there's ever a problem that an organization, it's good to kind of build these types of cultures in the way you run your businesses, is certain large-scale problem, we're losing clients or our revenue's declining, whatever. Start to build a mission concept. If you have a bigger team, of course. Entrepreneurs are pretty much in those two over there. That's natural to them. I mean, before you've scaled. But when you start getting larger, you start to need to break up your teams into, we're on a mission to go and solve this thing for the next 3-week sprint using an agile methodology. And then the networked organizations or design is that no longer is it, I'm in my silo of HR, I'm in my marketing department and we don't speak. It's about how do we network and keep that entrepreneurial spirit that is so important and critical to scaling organization, but structured in a way that there's constant communication, borrowing, I need marketing help, come bring it in. in my opinion, and I've now designed the organizations to be fit for purpose for the future of work, it's called decentralized autonomous organizations, DAOs, where you no longer actually ever have a marketing function. It's all skills-based, and you're bringing them together in pods and squads and tribes, call it, where they're solving constant problems like projects. That's the new way of work. And I think I'm the only one doing it in South Africa, and I'm starting a trend over here. It's in the US, it's being done in a few companies. Google uses this, Slack does it like this, as well as there's one other organization that I've seen, F1, we'll get to that as well. Okay, so F1 do it very similar as well. Okay, so how am I doing for time? I'm almost kind of
18:24.
Okay, we started about how long? 20 minutes late. Okay. So I'm going to rush through this, but essentially, you've got 10 teams, 20 drivers, 23 races, 5 continents in an 8-month kind of, that's how long it spans over. 100 million views per race, traveling circus, that's what they call it. How do they organize? How do these these teams do it? They're having to literally go and design thousands of components on a weekly basis. So this is called the team of teams. How do they do it? So these are the different teams that they have, or kind of skill sets. You've got your design, your machine shop, aero performance, 3D printing, and they are having to innovate. They've got to, I think it's every week, they've got to adjust 1,000 components for the next race. By the end of the year, 90% of their parts are obsolete. And so they're constantly having to look at the nuts and bolts, literally, around how do they get this thing to become 2 seconds faster. That's their aim. Their whole vision and purpose is not to make billions, which they do anyways, but they obviously got backing, Ferrari, etc. But they're ready to get 2 seconds faster every single year. If they're not 2 seconds faster, they'll be at the back of the pile of the pack by the next year. And how do they organize this? So the first thing they do, you can take, this is really the first step in any small organization, is to have directional purpose. Essential intent. There's a book by Evan Kagan, which is about essentialism, which talks about, typically in traditional organizations, we have energy that's disparate and dispersed. We don't have a real one element which is all going in the same direction. And so that fractal person, that directional energy is that's the first step, defining that. But that's very nice. You need to have essential intent is the second part, which is almost like part B of that. So having something which translates, so they need to become whatever, Red Bull has a certain vision. They're all in one direction, we've got to get there. But their essential intent is to become 2 seconds faster. And every single one of those teams is pushing for the same thing. But that's very nice. They've got over 20 different kind of verticals. How do they do that? How does it come into the squad or their tribe? It's very nice we have this 2 seconds faster goal, and each team can apply it, but how do they do it? So the first thing they do is they're very, very consistent and dynamic around feedback and debriefing. They analyze consistently. So they, like for this, here's the Red Bull team. Straight after the race, literally straight after, they have the drivers, or each driver has their team, and they debrief about what went wrong, what went right. Did it for 2 hours, longer than the whole race itself. That's the first thing. But that's their core team. What about the rest? They've got 750 to 2,000 people per different car. So then on Monday morning, they've had their debrief internally after the race on that Sunday. The next day they fly back to the headquarters, and each different team, they've got 750 people in that room applauding, we won or we didn't win or whatever the case is, but they each go and start, they analyze based on the debrief that came from the internal meeting, and the head goes and debriefs with everybody, tells them this is what we need to be focusing on. So there's clear focus and direction. They know exactly what they need to be doing. Then what happens, they each go into their little verticals, each of the teams, and they do their work, and twice a day, there's the leader brings them together again, and they have a mini, well, not everybody, not the whole room, but each leader of each, or the supervisor of each squad, of each vertical, goes and gets together and they say, this is where we need you. This is how, and they communicate like a network. And they're saying, I need you for this because we're struggling with that. We didn't understand this. And so twice a day, straight, they go to the debrief internally, then they get externally. It's a consistent system of how they do this. Okay, I'm worried about time here, but let's just do it. So there's efficiency versus effectiveness. Take a look at this.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Newmore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch.
Let's go to the next slide. You get the point. Okay, now take a look at Ferrari. Now. So the next element in any organization is efficiency or effectiveness. So 67 seconds, 1.92 seconds, which was more efficient? So there's a complexity versus complication. Which is more efficient? Ferrari, you'd think, is more efficient, right? Well, efficiency is, in the way that we run our businesses, usually efficiency is like constraint. I've only got 4 people. They only put 4 people on there because they didn't want to have, Ferrari literally had like 20 people and there were 70 people sitting in the back doing nothing, right, at that point in time. They were doing other things around the other parts of the race, but they had a big team coming there, so they were more effective. They weren't efficient. Like efficiency is like, typically I get brought into organizations to go do a capacity study, like how many people should we have in our organization? So I'll do an analysis, whatever, and I'll say, this is how many people you need. So they were very efficient, but effective they weren't. These guys were they were going gung-ho and everything they could to get to their effectiveness, which is, what is their purpose statement, right? 2 seconds faster. We need to get 2 seconds. That's everything. And that's all that they were striving towards. So they were effective, they reached it, but they spent more money maybe to go and achieve it, right? So they were more effective. And that's it over here. So what was effective 100 years ago is no longer effective today. So design for efficiency, plan, predict, and control. That's your traditional start. We've got to plan, predict how many people do we need, etc. Versus evolutionary organizations, you guys, is about designing for adaptability. Sense and respond. Understand that it's complex. And it's all about value focus. What are we trying to get out of this? Okay. I'm not going to go through this, but essentially this is how they train. So another element is organizations need to have all the things we've said so far, and I'll summarize it shortly, but this is a video that shows how they practice 20 times every single day. You can go and actually watch this, and it's amazing how they have a choreographer, a dance teacher, coming to these teams and showing them how to step, so that, and you'll see it, I won't show you now, but you actually, to get these thick tires, how you got to put it in your legs. You got to make sure that you're doing a little bit of a jeté so that you can get it in there. And so they practice non-stop. Nothing is left to chance. An organization cannot leave that. No. Another thing, deep analytics and transparency. They've got over 1,000 sensors on every single vehicle that they're monitoring while the car is driving in the practice rounds. There's for safety, there's for turbo boosters, velocity, Everything is being measured in a back room in the headquarters, hybrid work, central, right? Not decentralized, but they're there and they're making calls with the leader of the whole thing consistently. Everything is analytics driven. The way we need to run our organizations is also analytics driven. You need to be doing that, investing in that. So first steps for every business. This is my last few slides. I'm sorry for it's taking long. So this is the Adidas curve. I'm not going to go into it now, but essentially an organization, when I mentor, when I run with some organizations, this is very fundamental that any small business needs to go through. Happy to spend another session or another time individually or whatever it is to go through it with you. But organizations need, when they get to go, which is when you're starting to pump out, you're doing pretty well. You're starting to get nice sales in, you're starting to see lots of traction going on. What that leads to often is that the founder's trap, which is you become arrogant. I know everything of you, I'm holding on. But when you start to understand how to deal with complexity, so there's flexibility or adaptability, and then balancing the control and flexibility, that's when most companies get to this little hiccup and they get to adolescence. But that's really where you want to be, and prime is where you want to be getting to, adolescence and prime. Just wanted to show you that I think it's worthwhile for you looking at. So typical organizational debt, which we talked about earlier, that I'm seeing in small organizations, is sales at the expense of operating systems and culture. So that's your go phase. We just got to do the sales, and then what happens is you have to do that, right? But you forget to focus inwards around how do we build that operational resilience around sales, the operating system and culture, getting the right fit of people when you're able to employ somebody, putting in actually documenting how you're running your sales drive. How do we do it? Do we use LinkedIn? Do we use da-da-da-da? And actually saying, to the extent of how your conversations are holding, analyzing your conversations. The founder, know-it-all mindset and attitude. How do we let go as opposed to controlling everything? Start to kind of master your own ability as a founder very early on. Don't wait until you've now scaled, because you're going to create a bad culture. And I've seen so many organizations that I'm working with that are like-sized, they've got these horrible and ruthless people. And their organizations, they had a really nice, good 10-year streak, and now they're going down. Or they had a 50-year streak, and now they're going down. Why? Structured around people, as opposed to what the right fit is. We got our founders, 2 founders, then became 5 people, and that's our core team. But actually, maybe we need to make a decision to actually, you need to move on. You're not good for our business anymore. So those things around who we have in our business is very important as well. And too many priorities. How do we kind of use under or even an overstatement in strategizing? What do we prioritize? For me, for example, I know I don't want to be doing coaching. It's something which it takes up too much time. I can't scale it really. And so my core has become, in other areas. I know what I don't want to be prioritizing. I'm very good at it, for example, but I don't want to be there. So when people ask me for that, I say, sorry, unless you're a friend or whatever, or as a mentee. Drawing organograms and developing JDs. The first thing we start doing, many organizations, we say, this is how we're going to be in the future. We have this department and that. You're wasting your time. Just get on with the job. Build your operating system and your culture with an adaptive blueprint, and then also start to get more sales in. That's all that you really need to be focusing on. The top line, sales, and not at the expense of, but and operating system. And build your kind of way of working. So just a little bit more about, very, very briefly, purpose. First thing, having purpose. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men to gather wood, divide the work and give orders. Instead, teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Let people buy into your vision that you bring into your business. Also from a sales perspective. Make it fractal. I'm not going to go into too much of that. Another thing, sell. But be defined and define exactly how you are going to be doing. So for me, for example, in my area, what I'm currently using very hard, and I've started studying, and I'm part of a group around LinkedIn. I kind of sweated quite a lot, and starting out for the last 6 months, we're doing it very hard, and now I'm starting to get a lot of referrals in it. X is another way, Instagram is, depending on the industry, and Facebook is always good. But know where you're going to be driving, define that, and there's lots of others, by the way, Google Ads, etc. But make sure that you are in there, SEOs, etc. Those are things that you need to be doing. So purpose, sell. Make sure you have that. Then apply dashboards and data to make decisions. So HubSpot, for example, is superb. So for your CRM, your customer relations management, is very important to have, but it needs to be analytical. You need to be able to go and follow and build that discipline around seeing, because as I said before, all the governance and red tape that are in organizations, if you have dashboards, it makes your decision making that much quicker. I'm not going to go into anti-patterns now. Hiring the right fit for the culture. We've discussed that as well. So make sure that now, when you have that vision as to where you are, and you know yourself through mastery, make sure that you hire the right fit for your culture. I've seen it go down the wrong way too many times. And then I get called in, so I'm happy, but yeah. Roles and rights clarity. How do we work together? What is my role? And don't waste your time building job descriptions. Job descriptions, although I'm on a project right now, one of the banks, I've got one of my staff members to go and do all the job descriptions for them. But it's in the next 5 years, I don't think there's going to be a job description anymore. It's all about skills. What is your role? So define the purpose of that role, and then get someone to go and fill it, and then let them, through autonomy, let them go and build out what it is. And it's going to be changing all the time. There's certain standards within any, kind of skill set, and they'll know that if they're going to be best suited for it. But ultimately, make sure you have that clarity and rights clarity and how your ways of working are. And in atomic agreements, make sure that you have your agreements with each other. Make sure that you know exactly what is expected of me. Have those difficult conversations up front. And almost storm to norm. It's something very powerful, I think, when you, like now I've got a new partner that's coming into my business, and almost like created a storming thing the other day. And just wanted to see how he was reacting, etc. So if you look at this model, I think for any organization that's starting up or scaling, make sure you have your purpose and strategy. That's fine. But your strategy, again, just to re-emphasize, it's not your 5-year strategy. Your strategy is going to be maximum 1 year to 2 years, but revisit it every month or 2. Are we aligning? Is the strategy pivoting us to our purpose? Are we putting things in place? Then the way we share information, the systems we have in place, the dashboards, all those things that I just said. Resources, the right people, the right budgets as well. How do we work with budgets? And then workflow, how do we do that? And autonomy is a big one. Those are the elements I feel, because especially the scaling, it's more headed towards complexity consciousness, where people positivity is less at first. And the very last slide and last point is this. The way that you can do this, guys, is experimentation. So it's something called looping. So what I'm doing with a lot of my clients now is, if there's a tension aligned to your strategy and purpose, we are not hitting it. This is what we believe is wrong. So obviously, you have people who are at the coalface, they can suggest certain tensions, but then build that practice. There's no right answer. There's no right answer. Build a practice, and then experiment with it, and then feedback. And that happens every, then you have a sprint of 3 weeks, see if it solves that tension, and then you iterate it again until you've kind of solved that thing. So that's it in a nutshell. It's a long session, I'm sorry.
We need another hour.
You need another hour, right? So you guys can follow me on LinkedIn, or reach out to me at that email address. So yeah, thank you.
Well, I think that the last hour just flew. Evan,
Did it?
It did. That was absolutely amazing. I'm sure you will all agree. I will do my best.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Aline. Cool.
I will do my best to try and summarize it as much as I can for you, and share the resources with you tomorrow. We have already sent you our feedback survey that we do need you to complete. It's in your SMS, not your WhatsApp. So please, if you don't mind taking 1 moment to complete that. And Evan, there's nothing like life. You are so incredible. And I remember actually seeing Evan, I think it was the first couple of weeks when I started at Object, 8 years ago at Deloitte, and you just blew everyone away. And you have done so again tonight.
Thank you.
Cool. Any questions? You can stand up. Thank you.
I think if anyone wants to take a couple of pics with Evan,
Yeah, that's
please
fine.
come up.
Famous.
We use it. We'll use it on LinkedIn.
You can get my autograph.
If
I
you
can
need
put on your
lip
t-shirts
gloss
and
or
stuff.
whatever.
Okay. Any questions? Please feel free to ask individually, or you can do it in front of the forum if you want to stay. Feel free. Hello. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. You know, in my business, I always ask myself, how do I make sure that I incorporate AI into my business? ChatGPT.
GPT, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. So I know it works, and I would love to incorporate it in my marketing strategy, and I just don't know how, but I know it can work,
Yeah,
because
so you-
I am a fan of processes, you know, simplifying processes and procedures.
Yes. So specifically your marketing strategy.
Yes.
There are some plugins to help with that. I mean, when I use ChatGPT, for example, on LinkedIn. So I know what I want to be saying on LinkedIn, but let's say I've got some work that I need to be delivering on. So I've coded ChatGPT, the paid version, and I say, I call her Brenda. The relationship with Brenda. I say, hey Brenda, I want to create a post with in UK English, whatever, and I put kind of the 4 points that I want to be saying, just on a very high level. And it now knows my style because it's been writing with me for 6 months. And then it pumps out and I say short and succinct, and it does it for me. So I use ChatGPT for LinkedIn very much, or very often. And there are, you know, there's plugins for Instagram. There's pictures. If you don't have a picture or whatever it is, you can just tell it to go and design something for you quickly. In your own industry, I know you're in the fashion industry. It's I saw one today actually on Instagram where you can actually get designs. I've got two very good friends in Cape Town who are making a hell of a lot of money out of AI picture prints, and they're selling it in curios, etc., and even more complex things than that. So there's a lot. You can just do some research. There are people who are specializing in this. It's always good to reach out to them, even on LinkedIn, and just get some advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I've got a question. Thanks for the talk, it's very interesting. You spoke a lot about almost trying not to focus so much on the formalities and the things which don't really make an impact, and actually let go and focus on things which add value. So where's the line between starting out a business in terms of what are the fundamentals or the things which have to be done before you actually start doing the work, as opposed to like the planning, like business plan? Is that necessary or not? Jump into it or don't, you know, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I don't think a plan, even when I'm doing consulting work now, it's very much based on that experimental kind of concept. So plans, I don't really know if I've ever stuck to a plan. I think it's just a waste of time. We've got to be using our time so effectively these days that you don't really want to be spending too much time on things that are taking away from what's core to what can be done. Yeah, that's where I'm running. You need to be super, I mean, you saw the way F1, I mean, all the organizations that I'm working with are I'm positioning super fine systems so that everything is well organized and well oiled, because you want to be able to glean as much data as possible to make quick decisions, as opposed to plan, but like I don't look at that anymore. Like I want dashboards that's going to feed back around my CRM, around my sales, which segments am I doing better in? Maybe I should start canning that segment because look, it's so low. Or why? To run up a mission team to see. We thought that area was going to, that segment was going to be our greatest customer, but actually it's not. Why? Let's understand. Let's go interview them and put a mission around that to go and see if you still believe that's core. If it's not, if the statistics are telling you something, then you've got to listen to it and pivot either way. Delve into it, understand why, or just say I'm dropping and I'm focusing. So things have to be so agile and so quick these days. It's critical to have systems and processes, but don't get bogged down by that process.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Please.
You probably have to be goal orientated, and the organization probably has to work with a well-oiled machine that everybody knows what they're doing and for what purpose they're doing.
That's right. How do you know that?
I'm business coach.
No, I'm saying, how do you know? I know that. Okay, good. But I'm saying, how does an organization determine if they've got fractal purpose? Ask the people.
No, you have to communicate that to the people.
But I want to just caveat that because you could have great communication. I'm working with Sun International at the moment.
Yeah.
They've asked me to do this for their online gambling, and you ask the people on the ground there about what the purpose is. They don't know. They don't know.
Isn't there every
It may be on the wall, or it's South Africa, educating for life. Very nice statement. So where I'm starting with Sun International, where I've started is purpose. How do you make, what does educating for life mean?
Yeah.
In your own pod or your vertical, or however you traditionally designed,
Yeah.
what does it mean to you? How do you bring that to life?
Doesn't every company needs to have vision and then a mission statement and values, and that's what drives the company. It has to be driven, and it has to be communicated to every employee.
I agree with you, but I'd make it less complicated than that.
That's very simple, I think.
I know it is, but I'm saying values, the way that you build values and build a mission, etc., I would go as far as a purpose. And then make it fractal in terms of what does it mean to me and how is that driving every decision? I was a mentor to a small coffee shop in Johannesburg just before COVID. And their whole positioning, their whole mission and drive and value system was all around, we want to create every single decision is about how do we make it a more home feeling meal. Everything's around that. The way the barista serves his coffee, makes his coffee. The way the hostess goes and invites people into the coffee shop. The way the waitress or waiter goes and serves the meal. The way the chef talks to people, and that's all about, are we living up? Is our decision, and every decision is made, are we coming closer to 2 seconds faster, or are we coming closer to that homemade meal? Right? When COVID hit, they pivoted their whole strategy. They still wanted to have that vision. The purpose was there. But the purpose then turned in COVID to become the most clean coffee shop in town. So purpose can change. It becomes your mission, right, aligned. But I think that sometimes we get caught, and I'm a consultant, I get blamed for this all the time. That's why I'm picking it up. A business coach as well, and this is feedback that I get from my clients, I used to be at least when I was growing as a consultant, is we're full of jargon.
Jargon has good meaning.
Yes, it does. I can see you're very passionate about it. That's great. So I'm trying to build, the traditional thinking is all these, the jargon style things. I'm trying to say evolutionary organizations are actually dropping all of that and making it their own in a way. But we're talking the same language, I think, in the end.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I also worked for human capital Deloitte.
Okay. Cool. Maybe we met each other.
No, I think before your time.
No, okay. We'll have a chat. We'll take it offline.
All right.
But I hear what you're saying. I get it.
Just on that note, from an employee perspective, if your employees are not aligned with your purpose and what you're driving to do, and they're not motivated to do that,
100%.
because coming from a retail background where we weren't driven and we weren't aligned with the vision of the directors,
Yeah.
we we couldn't see where they were going,
That's right.
and therefore it falls apart.
Has to
So
be communicated.
what Ed's saying is that I think is that, like, from a leader perspective, you have to drive your employees to
It has to be
understand and
communicated,
see
yeah.
in your head
Yeah.
what you're trying to get to.
Yeah. The employees have to know why they're there, what they're doing, for what
Yeah.
purpose,
Yeah,
and that's more or less mission.
yeah.
Depends how you.
So
call
my
it.
mother's told me for many years, in fact my wife also does now, this is my purpose in life. And guess what? I didn't follow it. So it was communicated very well, maybe not the right way, but I didn't follow that purpose. It's got to what I'm trying to
It's
say,
an order.
we've got to break the system and bring it into the heart, into the essence. And that takes communication,
That's right.
but in a way that relates and let them come up with that purpose,
Yeah.
aligned to their high purpose.
That's right. When I was working with companies, yes, I communicated mission with the employees, and I asked them how they feel about it. What do you think? How we can achieve it? And
Great.
first of all, their involvement in the mission or purpose, how they see it, and what they have, what values they have to achieve it.
Yep.
So it comes mainly, it's two ways process
Yep.
where the employees have participated as well.
Absolutely. Any other questions before my guy's gonna go? Feel free to go.
We have put these on your tables if anyone would like